In every era, there emerges a force not shaped by privilege or position, but by conviction, a soul refined through trials, clarity, and moral courage. Anointed Woman is not about power bestowed, but power discovered, the kind that grows from struggle, discipline, and awakening. This message calls us to recognize that true anointing is not a title, but a transformation, the moment when purpose overrides fear and truth replaces illusion. Power is not inherited, purchased, or given freely. It is earned, slowly, painfully, through the endurance of what others cannot bear. The world often confuses noise for power, authority for leadership, and control for strength. But real power is quiet, disciplined, and unwavering. It is not the roar of dominance, but the calm persistence of those who refuse to yield when the storms rage. Endurance is not simply survival. It is the art of remaining true when every reason to surrender has presented itself. It is the ability to hold your ground not because the path is easy, but because your purpose is unshakable. Every difficulty, every setback, every betrayal becomes a test, a question the universe asks: how much truth can you hold without breaking? The one who endures learns to answer not with words, but with presence. When life strips away comfort and certainty, endurance becomes the only strength that matters. You begin to understand that what's being tested is not your talent, not your luck, but your inner structure, the moral foundation that no one sees. Many people rise quickly and fall faster because their rise was not built on endurance. They chased outcomes, not principles. They sought applause, not mastery. But the enduring knows something deeper. Growth is not measured by how high you climb, but by how well you hold steady when everything shakes beneath you. Endurance changes the quality of power itself. It purifies it. It takes ambition, raw and impatient, and refines it into conviction. It turns anger into purpose, pain into perspective. Power without endurance corrupts easily because it has never known struggle. It lacks humility, but power built through endurance carries wisdom, the kind that cannot be faked or learned from books. It's the power of one who has walked through the fire, not just talked about it. To endure is to train the mind to see meaning in difficulty. It is to understand that resistance is not an obstacle, but a sculptor, shaping who you are becoming. Every disappointment chisels away arrogance. Every failure forces self reflection. Every delay teaches patience. The enduring do not curse the process, they learn from it because they have discovered that time itself is a teacher, sometimes ruthless, but always honest. Real endurance demands faith, not necessarily in religion, but in the sacred logic of persistence. It's the belief that even in the darkest night, something within still holds light. You may not see the outcome, but you trust the effort. You continue because stopping would mean betraying the very truth that gave you life. This faith is not blind optimism, it's disciplined defiance. It's looking at the chaos and saying, I will not be undone by this. The world glorifies instant results, but endurance reminds us that true transformation is never instant. You cannot rush wisdom, you cannot microwave purpose. The things that last, character, integrity, mastery, are all earned through seasons of waiting, through the repetition of unseen work. The one who endures does not seek shortcuts because they understand that shortcuts always rob the soul of depth. And there is something sacred in struggle. Endurance reveals the parts of ourselves that comfort hides. It teaches us that strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to carry it without losing compassion. The enduring are not hardened, they are softened in a way that makes them unbreakable. Their empathy deepens because they know suffering. Their clarity sharpens because they've faced confusion. They no longer chase validation because they have found fulfillment in resilience. Power earned through endurance does not demand attention. It commands respect without asking. It doesn't boast, it doesn't compete. It simply is. When someone with true endurance speaks, there is weight in their words because those words have been lived, not rehearsed. Their silence carries authority because they no longer need to prove what has already been proven by their journey. Endurance also builds vision. It teaches that pain has patterns, and those patterns reveal truths about life, people, and systems. You begin to see beyond the surface, beyond success and failure, into the deeper laws that govern existence. You learn that strength without patience is chaos, and vision without endurance is fantasy. Endurance grounds both. In time, endurance transforms into quiet confidence, not the shallow confidence of arrogance, but the kind rooted in self knowledge. You no longer fear loss because you've survived it. You no longer seek permission because you've earned your place through experience. That is power, not the ability to control others, but to remain centered in a world designed to distract and divide. Every soul that endures becomes a beacon. They remind others that the path of strength is not glamorous but sacred. They show that endurance is not just about holding on, it's about becoming someone who no longer needs to hold on. Someone who moves through life with balance, clarity, and unshakable calm. Power earned through endurance cannot be taken away because it was never given, it was built from within. It's the power that survives failure, transcends judgment, and outlasts adversity. It's the kind of power that doesn't just change the person who holds it, it changes everything and everyone around them. For in a world addicted to speed, those who endure remind us that what is real, what is lasting, and what is truly powerful always takes time. There comes a point in every life when the temptation to please others collides with the truth of who you really are. That moment defines character. Integrity is not a performance, it is the alignment between what you know is right and what you choose to do, even when it costs you the comfort of being accepted. Approval may offer temporary ease, but integrity builds eternal peace. The two are rarely compatible, and choosing between them is the true test of strength. Approval is seductive because it fills a void we all carry, the human need to be seen, liked, and validated. From childhood, we are taught to seek permission before we act, praise before we believe, and acceptance before we belong. The world rewards conformity and punishes authenticity. But those who live by integrity eventually realize that approval is an illusion. It shifts with mood, culture, and convenience. One moment you are celebrated, the next you are forgotten. Integrity, however, endures. It does not bend with opinion, it stands on truth quietly but firmly. To live with integrity is to understand that you will often walk alone. The crowd may turn away not because you are wrong, but because you refuse to play their game. You will lose admirers when you stop performing for them. You will lose followers when you stop echoing what they want to hear. But you will gain something infinitely greater, the ability to look at yourself without shame. There is no applause louder than a clear conscience. Integrity requires courage because it threatens systems built on deception. In a world where manipulation is celebrated as intelligence and dishonesty as strategy, speaking truth feels like rebellion. It is rebellion, the kind that frightens those who profit from lies. When you refuse to compromise your values for acceptance, you expose the insecurity of those who depend on deceit for survival. Integrity does not scream, it simply refuses to participate in what it knows is false. The journey toward integrity is not about perfection, it is about consistency. It is choosing to act rightly even when no one is watching, especially when it's inconvenient. It's about telling the truth when silence would protect you. It's about honoring promises even when the other party has forgotten theirs. Every choice that honors your principles reinforces your strength. Every compromise weakens it. Over time, integrity builds an inner fortress, invisible but impenetrable. Those who seek approval live at the mercy of others' moods. Their peace depends on being liked, their direction on being applauded. They are never free, only managed. But those who live with integrity cannot be controlled. Their validation comes from within. They are not swayed by trends or threatened by disapproval because they do not measure themselves by external standards. Their power lies in self trust. When you no longer need others to confirm your worth, you become untouchable. Integrity also reveals who truly belongs in your life. When you stop pretending, you lose those who loved your mask but attract those who value your essence. Approval gathers crowds, integrity builds tribes. The ones who remain are few, but they are real. You no longer need to perform to keep them close. Honesty is enough. This is the quiet reward of integrity, a life surrounded by truth. There will be moments when integrity feels costly. You may lose opportunities, relationships, or recognition. You may question whether the price is worth it. But what is the worth of success if it demands you betray yourself to achieve it? What is the value of admiration if it's built on a lie? Approval can open doors, but integrity builds foundations. Doors can close, foundations remain. Integrity is not rigidness, it's strength guided by wisdom. It doesn't reject people or the world. It simply refuses to be molded by what is false. It allows you to navigate life without losing your center. You can engage with others, even those who disagree, without surrendering your principles. That's the beauty of integrity. It doesn't seek dominance, it seeks balance. In time, integrity becomes magnetic. People may not always agree with you, but they will trust you. Your words will carry weight because they're not for sale. Your presence will comfort because it is genuine. Integrity creates influence far greater than approval ever could. Approval fades when trends change. Integrity endures because truth never goes out of style. The world often confuses diplomacy with dishonesty, compromise with cowardice, and humility with silence. But the one who lives with integrity knows when to speak and when to stay silent, not to please, but to preserve truth. They understand that real power does not come from being liked, but from being right with oneself. At the end of the day, approval will never satisfy the soul that knows it has betrayed its own values. No amount of praise can silence the quiet ache of self betrayal. But integrity, though it may cost comfort, gives peace that cannot be bought. It lets you sleep without regret and wake without pretending. It frees you from the exhausting performance of being what others demand. Power built on approval is temporary, it depends on an audience. Power built on integrity is eternal, it stands even in silence. The applause may fade, the crowd may disperse, but the truth you've lived remains. And that truth, once embodied, becomes unshakable. For when all else falls away, integrity is the only approval that truly matters, the approval of the self that refused to bow to anything less than what is right. Awakening is not a single moment of revelation, it is a lifelong process of seeing through illusions that once felt like truth. It begins quietly, often through pain, when comfort can no longer hide the contradictions of life. You start to notice how the world is built, not on fairness or wisdom, but on repetition and distraction. And somewhere inside, a voice begins to whisper that there must be more than this. That whisper is the beginning of awakening. To awaken is to become aware, painfully aware, of what you once accepted without question. You begin to see how fear has shaped choices, how routine has replaced reflection, how society trains us to obey instead of understand. You realize how much of what you believed was not born of truth, but of conditioning. The awakening soul cannot go back to sleep because once you see, you cannot unsee. You recognize the difference between what looks right and what is right, and that clarity changes everything. Awakening is not glamorous, it is raw, uncomfortable, and often lonely. When you begin to think for yourself, you separate from the comfort of the crowd. The people around you may not understand because they are still living by the same patterns you are now questioning. You feel the weight of isolation, not because you are better than others, but because you have chosen honesty over illusion. Yet in that loneliness, something sacred grows: self trust. You begin to follow your own compass instead of borrowed maps. This awakening is the highest calling because it demands everything: your comfort, your conformity, and often your certainty. It asks you to trade the security of ignorance for the responsibility of awareness. Once awakened, you cannot claim you didn't know. You cannot close your eyes to injustice. hypocrisy, or manipulation, you begin to see how systems exploit not only labor and time, but also thought and emotion. You recognize the quiet violence in apathy, the complicity in silence, and the danger in pretending not to see. To awaken is to take back the mind that the world tried to program. Many fear awakening because it dismantles illusions they built their identity upon. It challenges beliefs inherited from family, culture, religion, and authority. It exposes how much of life has been lived in reaction rather than intention. Awakening requires humility, the courage to admit, I was wrong. But that humility is liberating. It frees you from the need to defend old lies. It allows you to rebuild from truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable. Once awake, you begin to move differently. You question what others call success. You measure wealth not by possession, but by peace. You no longer chase validation because you understand that real fulfillment cannot come from a system built to exploit emptiness. You stop running from pain and start learning from it. Every hardship becomes a mirror showing where growth is needed. Awakening transforms suffering into strength by teaching you that pain is not punishment, it is guidance. An awakened life is not about detachment from the world, but about engagement with clarity. You still work, love, and struggle, but you do so consciously. You no longer act from fear, but from understanding. You listen more, react less, and see people not as enemies or tools, but as reflections of the same human journey. Compassion becomes your natural response, not because you are naive, but because you understand that ignorance, not evil, is the root of most cruelty. Awakening also dismantles the illusion of control. You realize that much of life cannot be managed or predicted, and yet there is freedom in that surrender. You stop fighting the flow of existence and start aligning with it. You learn that peace is not found in external order, but in internal acceptance. The awakened mind stops chasing certainty and instead cultivates presence, the ability to be fully here, even when here is imperfect. But awakening is not a one time event, it deepens with every test. Life will continue to challenge your clarity, tempting you to fall back into old patterns of comfort and denial. Every disappointment will ask, will you close your eyes again? And every breakthrough will whisper, stay awake. It is a discipline, a practice of returning again and again to awareness. To be awake is to carry a quiet responsibility. You can no longer mock the blind because you remember when you were one of them. You can no longer exploit others because you see that their pain mirrors your own. You become accountable for your influence, aware of the energy you bring into every space. The awakened are not superior, they are simply aware, and that awareness makes them guardians of truth. The highest calling of awakening is not to escape the world, but to transform it, beginning with yourself. Every act of honesty, compassion, and courage ripples outward, weakening the machinery of ignorance. When one person wakes, others begin to stir. This is how change begins, not with revolutions of violence, but with revolutions of consciousness. Awakening demands that you live with eyes open, heart steady, and mind clear, even when the truth is painful. It is not a gift you receive, it is a path you choose. And though it costs comfort, it rewards you with something far greater, freedom. The freedom to think, to feel, to live without the chains of illusion. That is why awakening is the highest calling, because it is the point where life stops being a performance and becomes what it was meant to be, an honest encounter with truth. Grace is often mistaken for weakness, as if kindness were submission and forgiveness were surrender. But true grace is not passive, it is power restrained, strength refined, and clarity expressed through compassion. It is the quiet defiance of a soul that refuses to mirror the cruelty of the world. In a culture that glorifies revenge, dominance, and pride, to remain gentle, calm, and kind is one of the most radical acts of resistance there is. Grace begins where ego ends. When you are wronged, the instinct is to fight back, to prove, to win. The world teaches you that power means asserting control, but grace moves differently. It does not react, it responds. It looks at chaos and chooses peace, not because it is naive, but because it understands that retaliation only multiplies suffering. Grace is not weakness, it is wisdom. It recognizes that the highest victory is not to destroy an enemy, but to rise above becoming one. There is a special strength in the person who could lash out but doesn't, the one who could expose, embarrass, or hurt, but instead walks away with dignity. Grace is the refusal to let the darkness of others dictate the tone of your soul. It is quiet, but it is not silent. It speaks through restraint, through poise, through the calm refusal to participate in cycles of harm. It is the slow, patient revolution of one who has mastered the art of inner freedom. When you practice grace, you break the rhythm of violence that the world depends on to stay divided. Every act of revenge keeps the machine running, an endless loop of pain feeding pain. But when you respond with grace, you interrupt that system. You show that love can exist where it shouldn't, that peace can survive in the midst of hostility. That's resistance at its purest, to remain kind in a world that profits from anger. Grace is not compliance. It does not mean staying silent in the face of injustice or tolerating abuse. It is not about allowing others to walk over you. It's about choosing how you walk through the fire. Grace confronts truth without hatred, exposes wrongdoing without cruelty, and demands accountability without vengeance. It stands tall, speaks clearly, and moves with self control. It says, "You cannot turn me into what hurt me." That declaration is revolutionary. To embody grace, you must first master pain. You cannot give grace if you are still consumed by resentment. You cannot forgive until you understand your own capacity for failure. Grace grows from empathy, the realization that every person who wounds another is, in some way, wounded themselves. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it frees you from being poisoned by them. The more deeply you understand human brokenness, the easier it becomes to meet it with compassion instead of contempt. Grace is the discipline of keeping your peace sacred. When the world provokes you to anger, grace reminds you that your energy is too valuable to waste on vengeance. It teaches you that not every battle deserves a response, not every insult requires correction. Some fights are traps meant to pull you down to a lower frequency. Grace steps over them, not out of fear, but out of mastery. It knows that silence can be louder than shouting, and patience sharper than pride. This form of resistance is rare because it requires humility, the willingness to be misunderstood, to be seen as weak by those who equate kindness with submission. But grace doesn't seek validation. It is rooted in self respect, not approval. It understands that truth doesn't need to announce itself, it reveals itself in time. So, while others rage and tear, grace builds and heals. It creates space for transformation, not only in others, but in yourself. Grace is also resistance against despair. It refuses to let bitterness define you. It's the choice to keep loving even after being hurt, to keep believing in goodness even when the world feels hollow. Grace is the inner rebellion against cynicism. It's saying, I will not let pain make me small. I will not let injustice make me hateful. I will not let suffering steal my softness. That stance, steady, gentle, and unbroken, is power in its highest form. Those who live with grace change the atmosphere around them. They bring calm where there was tension, light where there was confusion, and dignity where there was shame. Their presence disarms hostility, not by overpowering it, but by revealing its futility. People cannot fight what does not fight back. They cannot destroy what refuses to hate. Grace is the quiet mirror that forces others to see themselves clearly. Living with grace takes courage because it often goes unrecognized. The world celebrates victory through force, not through forgiveness. Yet, in the long run, grace always wins. Empires collapse, reputations fade, but the memory of compassion endures. It leaves behind not ruins, but healing. To respond to life with grace is to choose creation over destruction, to build bridges where others burn them. Grace does not promise comfort, it promises freedom. It frees you from the need to retaliate, from the heaviness of bitterness, from the endless thirst for validation. It allows you to walk through conflict with serenity and to leave every encounter lighter than you entered it. Grace is not the absence of strength, it is strength tamed by understanding. In a world built on dominance, the gentle soul is the most dangerous one. To love where hate thrives, to forgive where revenge tempts, to remain kind in the face of cruelty, that is not surrender. That is resistance in its purest, most powerful form. Grace does not shout, it simply stands, unbothered, unbroken, and unyielding, proof that peace itself is an act of revolution. Brokenness has a way of bringing us to truths we would never touch in comfort. It strips away the illusions we cling to, our control, our plans, our certainties, until all that remains is what is real. It humbles us, disarms us, and forces us to see ourselves without the masks. At first, it feels cruel. It feels like life has betrayed us. But in time, we come to understand that brokenness was never there to destroy us, it was there to teach us. When everything falls apart, the noise of the world fades, and we finally hear the whisper of our soul. Pain silences distraction. It slows you down long enough to face the things you've been avoiding, the lies you told yourself, the fears you buried, the truths you didn't want to admit. Brokenness is not the end, it's the invitation to rebuild on truth rather than illusion. You begin to see that what shattered was never meant to last, and what remains is what matters most. There is a wisdom that only suffering can teach. No book, no mentor, no success can offer the depth that pain does. Brokenness reshapes how we see others, how we understand love, and how we measure strength. It teaches humility because it reminds us that everyone, no matter how strong they appear, carries invisible battles. It teaches compassion because once you've been broken, you recognize the same H in others. You stop judging quickly, speaking harshly, or assuming you understand. You learn to listen with gentleness, to speak with care. Brokenness softens the edges of the soul. At its core, brokenness is a mirror. It shows you where you've built your identity on people, possessions, or pride. When those things collapse, you realize that your worth was never supposed to depend on them. You see how much of your life was spent trying to control what could never be controlled. Brokenness teaches surrender, not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of resistance. You stop fighting the reality of what is, and in that acceptance, you find peace. There is also strength hidden in every fracture. When you've been shattered and survived, you no longer fear being broken again. You understand that pain cannot undo you, only refine you. You carry scars, but those scars become your proof, evidence that you endured what was meant to break you and still became whole again. The world often values perfection, but brokenness reveals a deeper beauty, the kind that comes from being real, from being forged in struggle, from knowing the price of peace. Brokenness teaches patience because healing cannot be rushed. It's a slow rebuilding of trust, trust in yourself, in others, in life. You learn to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. You learn that growth often happens in silence, that answers come not through demand, but through endurance. There is a sacred stillness in waiting, in allowing the pieces of your life to fall into their rightful place. That stillness teaches faith, the belief that even when you cannot see progress, something within you is being restored. Many try to hide their brokenness behind pride or pretense, afraid of appearing weak. But the truth is, brokenness makes you authentic. It strips away the arrogance that pretends to know, the vanity that demands attention. You no longer need to prove your worth because you have seen it tested in fire. You become less interested in image and more interested in truth. The ones who have walked through pain carry a quiet confidence, not because they escaped suffering, but because they faced it and found themselves still standing. Through brokenness, we also learn gratitude. Pain sharpens appreciation. You begin to see beauty in small things. The sound of laughter, the kindness of strangers, the stillness of dawn. You stop chasing what doesn't matter and start valuing what does. The simple becomes sacred, the ordinary becomes divine. Brokenness shifts your perspective from wanting more to realizing you already have enough. Perhaps the greatest lesson of brokenness is that it connects us. When we share our wounds honestly, we create spaces for others to do the same. Our vulnerability becomes someone else's permission to heal. What once felt like shame becomes service. Your pain, once private, becomes a light for those lost in their own darkness. Brokenness transforms isolation into empathy, and empathy into unity. That is how healing multiplies, not through perfection, but through shared humanity. Eventually, you realize that brokenness never took anything from you that was truly yours. It removed what was false, purified what was real, and revealed what could endure. You are not less because of what you lost. You are more because of what you learned. You understand now that wholeness is not about being unbroken, but about embracing every part of yourself, even the ones that ache. Brokenness becomes the teacher that no one asks for but everyone needs. It teaches truth where comfort taught denial. It teaches empathy where pride taught judgment. It teaches resilience where ease taught dependence. And most of all, it teaches love, not the fragile love that fears loss, but the enduring love that sees beauty even in what has been broken. So when the world cracks beneath you, do not curse it. Do not rush to fix it or hide the pieces. Sit with it, learn from it, let the pain speak its wisdom. Because what feels like ruin is often the beginning of revelation. The moment your soul remembers what truly matters and who you truly are. In the end, brokenness doesn't destroy you, it introduces you to yourself. Power is often mistaken for the ultimate goal, the ability to control, to influence, to command. The world teaches us to chase it, to equate it with success, and to measure our worth by how much of it we can accumulate. But power without purpose is hollow. It intoxicates but never fulfills. It shines for a moment and then fades into the same emptiness it tried to fill. Purpose, on the other hand, endures. It does not seek control, it seeks meaning, and in that meaning, it transcends every illusion that power promises. Power belongs to the moment, but purpose belongs to eternity. Power depends on others, on their submission, their approval, their fear. It rises and falls with circumstance. One decision, one shift in fortune, one act of defiance, and it can disappear. Purpose is different. It lives within. It cannot be taken away because it was never borrowed. It does not demand recognition. It simply expresses itself through action. Those who live for power often fear loss, but those who live for purpose find freedom in service. History is full of those who held immense power yet left behind emptiness. They commanded armies, ruled empires, and shaped economies, but their legacy faded because it was built on dominance, not intention. Yet the ones who lived with purpose, thinkers, healers, teachers, visionaries, still echo through time. Their words, their compassion, their courage endure long after their names are forgotten. Purpose outlasts power because it transforms rather than controls. To live with purpose is to operate from a deeper understanding of self. It's realizing that what you do is not just about achievement, but about alignment, aligning your actions with your values, your time with your truth, your energy with your mission. Purpose asks, why? While power only asks, how much? Power competes, purpose contributes. Power seeks to impress, purpose seeks to impact. Power demands followers, purpose creates leaders. Purpose also reveals the limits of power. When you live with meaning, you begin to see that control is an illusion. You can influence circumstances, but you cannot own outcomes. You can lead people, but you cannot dictate their hearts. You can win battles, but you cannot conquer time. The pursuit of power keeps you chasing, while purpose teaches you to root yourself in what cannot be lost: integrity, truth, compassion, and contribution. True purpose does not always look impressive. It often works quietly, away from applause. It is the parent who raises a child with wisdom, the teacher who ignites curiosity, the artist who speaks truth through beauty, the worker who does their job with honesty even when no one notices. Power needs witnesses, purpose needs only conviction. Its fulfillment comes not from being seen, but from knowing that what you do matters. There is peace in living for purpose, a calm that power can never offer. Power demands maintenance. It feeds on fear of losing it. Purpose, however, gives energy. It restores rather than drains. When your life is guided by meaning, even hardship has direction. You stop seeing challenges as punishments and start seeing them as preparation. Each struggle becomes a tool shaping you into the person your purpose requires you to be. Purpose also humbles. It reminds you that your life is part of something larger than yourself. You begin to see that your gifts are not for hoarding, but for serving. The ego that craves power begins to dissolve, replaced by gratitude for the opportunity to contribute. You realize that greatness is not about being above others, but being useful to others. The more you live by purpose, the less you need to prove. There's a kind of clarity that comes when you trade ambition for meaning. You stop asking, "What can I gain?" and start asking, "What can I give?" You no longer measure your life by recognition, but by integrity. You stop chasing moments of victory and start building legacies of value. In doing so, you discover a power far deeper than dominance, the power to influence hearts, to awaken minds, to heal what is broken, and to inspire what has been forgotten. Purpose transforms power into service. It turns leaders into guides, wealth into opportunity, knowledge into wisdom. It grounds influence in morality and ambition in compassion. When power serves purpose, it becomes sacred, a force for building, not breaking, for connecting, not controlling. But when power is detached from purpose, it becomes destructive, consuming both the holder and the world around them. Those who live by purpose know that their worth does not depend on visibility or status. They are content in knowing that their work contributes to something greater than themselves. They are not motivated by comparison because they understand that meaning cannot be measured in titles or possessions. Their reward is the quiet assurance that they have lived truthfully, that their existence added value, even if the world never applauds it. In the end, power fades. Every empire collapses, every throne is emptied, every title loses relevance. But purpose remains, rippling through time, touching lives in ways you may never see. The power you held will be forgotten, but the purpose you lived will continue to speak. That is the ultimate transcendence. To live not for dominance, but for destiny, not for applause, but for alignment, not to be remembered for control, but to be remembered for contribution. Power makes noise, but purpose makes meaning. And meaning, unlike power, never